to bet on this Monday night, big Monday night football game, and we're going to get you ready. I'm Anita Marks. We've got a jam-packed show, a lot of great guests. We'll hear from Erin Dolan in just a second. Of course, we'll do a deep dive into the Monday night football game. What are our picks? What are our plays? Joe Fortenbaugh joins us on the program as well to talk some college football. And Rob Demoski is going to join us to talk about those Green Bay Packers pulling the huge upset yesterday against the Dallas Cowboys. Let's bring in Erin Dolan. Erin, how you doing? Your Eagles are playing tonight. Girl, you ready?
Yes, I am ready. I feel like we barely see the Eagles play. They've only played 2 games in the last 28 days, which is kind of crazy to think about.
So they should be revved, ready to go. All right, before we start talking Monday Night Football, we like a little reaction or no action. And let's start on the hardwood. You've got the Golden State Warriors not having a season that most people anticipated. Will they finish in the play-in tournament? And by the way, you can get that at plus 180. Reaction or no action?
No action for me on this bet, only because I feel like the Golden State Warriors at some point are going to figure it out because they are the reigning NBA Finals champions. Now, they are 0-7 on the road. I don't know what's going on with them in terms of that. They can't seem to win on the road, but I do think at some point they can turn things around and really try to get themselves back in the Western Conference standings. Now, it's not going to be easy, but it's something that is doable with the amount of time that we still have left on the schedule for the NBA. They got a 5-8 record right now, ranked 13th in the Western Conference. I think they're going to continue to move up. Things are going to adjust. And also some of the teams that are really good in the Western Conference might start falling off. We know that in the NBA, it feels like every month is a different type of wave of who's getting hot, who's not. I think the Warriors will figure things out throughout the rest of the season. So no action for this one.
You know what? A little reaction here with me, right? Like, I feel like each and every week I'm like, oh, you know, Warriors are going to turn it around. Warriors are going to turn it around. I mean, they can't seem to win outside of San Fran. They've lost 7 straight. They lost to the Kings, of course, their last game, 122-115. And I just don't know if there's an answer here. The bench play is not what it was last season. They're having rotation issues. And if Steph Curry's not, nailing like 35 points a game, they're losing. So I don't, will there be a trade in place? Possibly KD. I don't know, but they need more help. So a little reaction here for me, especially at plus 180. Number 2, the Dolphins win the AFC East, and you could get that at plus 230. The Bills, even though they lost to the Minnesota Vikings yesterday, are still favored to win the AFC East. But the Dolphins, you could get it plus 230. Erin, reaction or no action?
This was a really tough one to choose between. I'm going to go no action because I can't really make up my mind on this pick, so I think it's better to not put money on something you're not really that sure of. But with the Bills, that was a devastating loss yesterday to the Minnesota Vikings. The issue with the Bills right now is Josh Allen and his turnovers, as well as his interceptions. The man, when it comes crunch time, is throwing interceptions. You can't have that from a guy that you think is going to go on to win the division, also then go on to win the Super Bowl. Josh Allen, no longer the MVP favorite for what it's worth. Patrick Mahomes is number 1, then it's Jalen Hurts, and now Josh Allen has fallen to plus 500. Now, some of that might be that elbow. We know he was dealing with a UCL injury, but at the same time, this guy has done this continuously, so I'm a little bit concerned in terms of that. But I will say, if you look at their schedule, it's pretty easy going forward. The toughest teams that they are going to face are going to be the Dolphins, of course, who we are talking about as well in this little segment here, and the Bengals. Now, the Dolphins, I think they have been great. With Tua under center, they're really good. It's always a matter of can he stay healthy, should things fall into place. But I still think the Bills overall are probably a better team than the Dolphins. So it's probably a stay away, so no action for me.
Big reaction for me, and it's not just because I'm from the 305 and my mom's been blowing me up since yesterday. They're at the top of the division. But it's more than that. We don't know exactly if Josh Allen, with this elbow nerve injury, if he's going to be able to sustain and not re-injure it or make it even worse throughout the year. That's a really big concern. Meanwhile, this Miami Dolphins team, wow, offensively, they just look great. You've got 2 wide receivers who run like 4.1, 4.2 40s. Who's going to cover them? We could see absolutely nobody. Tyreek Hill is having a season for the ages, and I love the addition of Jeff Wilson in that backfield, and we just saw how explosive and what a great asset getting him at the trade deadline has been for them. So reaction here for me as well at plus 230. I'm all over it. Number 3, the highest scoring quarter tonight in the Monday Night Football game is going to be the second quarter, and you could get that at plus 114. Reaction or no action?
So this one I'm going to go reaction. As we know, the Philadelphia Eagles have been so good in the first half of games. They're leading the league with 20 points scored. Where you have some concerns with the Eagles is in that second half when they're averaging just 8 points. But the reason that I like this second quarter in particular is because when you look at the Eagles and break down each individual quarter, of those 20 points that I just mentioned in the first half of games, 17 of those are in the second quarter. So that might be one of the highest scoring quarters of this game. Overall, we know with the Washington Commanders, they don't put up a ton of points. In the 3 games that they've had Heineke under center, they're only averaging 19 points per game on the season, just 18 points per game. So I really expect this to come down to the Eagles and which quarter they're really good in. So I'm going to have to go with that second quarter. I would place money on that being the highest scoring quarter of the game.
I'm lockstep with you. Reaction here for me as well. I find it really interesting heading into this game tonight. Washington is the absolute worst 32nd team ranked in the NFL in regard to points per first quarter and first half. The Eagles, as you pointed out, are the absolute best. So I think that Washington it takes them a minute to get that engine revving and get them going. And of course, as you so eloquently explained it, just how otherworldly this Eagles team is in the second quarter. So I'm all over it as well. All right, so enough of that. Let's do a deeper dive into this Monday Night Football game. And so, Erin, as we know, the Eagles, your Flying Eagles, are favored by 11. The over-under is at 43.5. What's your play in this matchup?
So we had just talked about the second quarter and all the numbers that are relating to that. So I think I have to go with the Eagles in the second quarter and lay the 3 points. I don't feel comfortable laying the 11 points with the Eagles. I just don't really like that number at all. They're a much better team offensively and defensively than the Washington Commanders. But again, this is a divisional rivalry game. It's an isolated game. It's a Monday Night Football game. It feels like almost anything can happen. So that's why I'd rather isolate this to the second quarter. The first half, I think, would be a good play if you can still get it at -6.5. It's at that number on some of the books, but of course, we go off Caesar Sportsbooks odds, so I don't like it at -7. So the second quarter is the way I'm going to play it. And then in terms of that total, it does feel like an under game. It's just not something I'm looking to put money on tonight because this might be one of those where the Eagles just absolutely blow them out of the water, or it's a really tight-knit game. So I can't really get a feeling on that. So for me personally, I'd rather break down the numbers and take the Eagles in the second quarter and lay the 3 points.
So I got a little creative here in how I'm going to play this tonight. So again, we're in agreement here, right? Eagles are the better team. At home, rested, healthy, ready to go. Top 3 defense, plus 15 in turnover margin. By far the best in the NFL. Best first half team scoring at 57%. Washington, worst first half team scoring at only 18%. So with that being said, I'm going to go Eagles in the first half. And I'm taking the under at 22.5. Why? Division unders are hitting at 29, 13, and 1 this season. This is the second time these two teams will face off against one another, and they know each other extremely well. Also, Washington, one of the best rushing defenses in the NFL. So it's not like the Eagles are just going to be able to score at will. I'm also going to play the Eagles to win the matchup and the total of the game under, going 43.5. And you can get that at plus 130. So I'm playing this 2 ways. And again, I guess you would call it a side and a total parlay. And so I'm feeling I feel really good about this bet. I can't wait to watch this game. All right. Well, as you know, Erin, I love prop bets. So I'm going to dive into some quarterback prop bets with Jalen Hurts. And there's 2 prop bets I'm playing for him. One is under 40.5 rushing yards. Last game, he only carried the rock 9 times for 20 yards. In fact, like I said, Washington really good against the run. This Philadelphia Eagles team only put up 72 total rushing yards against Washington in week 3. And also they are third in pressure rate. However, I am going to go longest reception over 38.5 for the reason Jalen Hurts is the most accurate passer of passes 20 yards or more. Explosive passing plays. He's got 52% completion percentage, one of the best in the NFL. And of course, he's got A.J. Brown, Smith, Goddard, running that RPO style. He draws in those linebackers, he draws in those safeties, and then he goes over the top. So longest reception over 38.5. So those are just, I still have more coming your way, but let's go back to you. What are some of the prop bets you're gonna be dabbling in tonight?
I'm in agreement with you in Jalen Hurts, but I'm going to go under his rushing yards prop as well. It's at 41.5 now. It's been bouncing around all day. I know that you had mentioned just 40.5. I've seen as high as 42.5. It's just been all over the map. But nonetheless, I just feel like this number is way too high for a guy who, yes, in the first couple of weeks of the season, he was going off on the ground. But in week 3, when he played the Commanders, he only had 20 rushing yards on 9 attempts. That's because the Commanders' defense is really good at stopping the run. They're currently ranked 10th. So I do think that the game plan for Jalen Hurts is going to be to throw the ball tonight. The same game plan he had in week 3 when Devonta Smith put up a ton of receiving yards. A.J. Brown was great in that game as well. And Jalen Hurts, I mean, he crushed his passing yards prop that's posted for tonight. So since we're talking about Jalen Hurts and how good I think he'll be in the air, I also want to take him over 1.5 passing touchdowns. He's gone over this mark in 3 games. And on top of that, he had 3 passing touchdowns against the Commanders in that week 3 meeting. And also, if you look at the Washington Commanders defense, yes, they're good at stopping the run, but they are not good at stopping the pass whatsoever. They've allowed opponents 16 passing touchdowns, which ranks 3rd worst in the league, or is tied, I should say, 3rd worst in the league right now heading into this week. So knowing that that's the weakness of this team, and you got a quarterback under center like Jalen Hurts, he should air the ball out, have over 1.5 passing touchdowns, but not find much success on the ground. So taking him under his rushing yards prop as well.
All right, some other prop bets that I'm going to be eyeing. Let's start with the Eagles, and the one is A.J. Brown. I'm going over receiving yards, and also I'm going for him over longest reception, and you could get that at 26.5. Listen, Washington plays a lot of man coverage, and A.J. is targeted 35% of the time against man as opposed to 20% against zone. He's going up against Kendall Fuller probably 80% of the time as well tonight. 5 of his last 8 games, he has at least 1 reception for 30 yards, if not more. It's probably my favorite A.J. Brown bet on the table. As for Washington, I'm wearing the shirt for a reason. Curtis Samuel over receiving yards. To me, this is where the mismatch is. Washington is going to do anything offensively. It's going to be through Curtis Samuel. He's got great chemistry with Heineke. He averages 55 yards per game. He's coming out of the slot, and the Eagles are down their 2 starting slot corners. In fact, their 3rd slot corner, Scott, is dealing with an ankle issue. So for me, Curtis Samuel over receiving yards might be my favorite prop bet. Terry McLaurin under receiving yards. Darius Slay, Bradbury, yeah, good luck with that. I just don't think Terry's going to do much tonight. And Brian Robinson over 33.5 rushing yards. I think this is low, so I'm going to go over here. I do believe Washington is going to try to run the football. And keep in mind, without Jordan Davis, we saw an Eagles rush defense not play as great without that rookie stud, Jordan Davis. So I do like Brian Robinson over rushing yards tonight. Also, I think Washington's going to try to run the football, eat up some more time of possession to keep, of course, Jalen Hurts and that explosive Eagles offense off the field. Time for some pay dirt picks. And you're still crushing it, girl. Yeah, you're at 132.27. Unfortunately, Taysom Hill did not get in the end zone for either of us. Neither did Lamar Jackson for you. I put a boatload of money on Alvin Kamara. Yeah, that didn't pan out for me. Likely, of course, scored a touchdown. Should have had more money on him. So I'm sitting at $63.02. I don't know what that would buy me here in New York, but I don't even want to. Let's just let's continue. Maybe a cup of coffee.
Let's
try
buy you
to win
like
the people
maybe
some money.
a drink and a half.
Yeah, maybe. But with that being said, Erin, who's finding the end zone tonight?
So I'm going to put $15 on A.J. Brown. I really like the props that you mentioned about him. Like I mentioned, the game plan of the Philadelphia Eagles, I think that they're ultimately going to end up passing the ball for the majority of this game. So finding A.J. Brown in the end zone should be easy. He's got 6 touchdowns this season. He also had a touchdown against Washington Commanders in that week 3 meeting. Then I'm going to sprinkle a random amount of money. We're going to do $8 on Devonta Smith. And the reason being is this guy, in terms of touchdowns, he's not reliable, okay? He's got 2 touchdowns in the season, but one of them was against the Washington Commanders. He went off in that game. Remember he had that terrible fall when they knocked the wind out of his back in the end zone, but he still got the touchdown. Nonetheless, those are the 2 that I think will end up scoring. I had to take 2 wide receivers for the Eagles just because I don't trust the Washington Commanders to really score and put up a ton of points, and I expect Jalen Hurts to be throwing the ball all night. So that made the most sense to me, and hopefully we get back on track this week with some winners.
Now, Miles Sanders, I got not only scoring a touchdown, but I also have him scoring the first touchdown in the game tonight. I'm not expecting big things from Miles Sanders in the rushing attack. Like I said, Washington has a pretty good rush defense, but I do believe that he will find the end zone. Also, I'm with you with A.J. Brown. 3 straight games, he has scored a touchdown. In fact, he has 5 total touchdowns in his last 3 games. And I am sticking with Curtis Samuel. Again, I think he's going to be the elixir. If Washington has any chance of trying to put up some points on the board against the Eagles, it's going to be through Curtis Samuel. Erin, that about concludes it for us. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy your Eagles.
Thank you.
And fly, Eagle, fly.
Go Birds.
Go Birds, go Birds. We go from Aaron Dolan, we take you to Las Vegas. Joe Fortenbaugh, another Eagles fan. Fly, Eagles, fly, Joe. Welcome into bed. Always great to see your face. Before we move into some college football discussion, what are your plays tonight in this Monday Night Football matchup?
So I've got a handful, and I was watching you guys earlier. Bet, obviously, my favorite of all the ESPN digital betting shows. You know that, huge fan. You and I are lockstep in a lot of this. I'll get to the props in a moment. I am going to play the under 43.5 points here. I'm not laying the 11. I'm not taking the 11, but I will play the total in this one. Feels like a lower scoring game. What does Washington want to do? You talked about this. They want to run the football. That's the Achilles heel of the Philadelphia Eagles. Their run defense is suspect, and they're going to be without Jordan Davis, which is going to give Washington an opportunity to move the ball. And if you're moving the ball and you're on the field, that means Jalen Hurts and the Eagle offense is not on the field. Now, conversely, Philadelphia's defense is very good against the pass, and if Washington is down in this game, as an 11-point spread would indicate, you could be in a situation where late they're trying to throw against Bradbury and Slay, and they're not having a lot of success. So under 43.5 for the game. Now, prop-wise, A.J. Brown going over 71.5 receiving yards, and Brian Robinson over 33.5 rushing yards. I'll start there. Robinson's averaging about 13 carries per game this season. If he gets 13 carries tonight, we don't even need 3 yards a carry in order to go over the total. And I already talked about the Eagles' struggles with the run defense this year. He is going to split carries. It's a loaded backfield, but we can get to 33.5. And then with A.J. Brown, he's coming off one of his most disappointing efforts of the season. They targeted him a season low 6 times. I think there's going to be an emphasis to get him the ball in this matchup against Washington. 71.5 is cheap because of what happened in that Houston game, so I'm going over his total as well.
I like it. I like it. All right, let's do a deep dive into what's going on in college football. And you and I were on the right side of TCU this week, of course, going up against Texas. They won 17-10. So let's take a look at the odds on who reaches the Final Four, as we like to say, right? And so, looking at these odds here, who are the 4 teams you think are going to be in it to win it? Joe.
All right, so first and foremost, I do have Georgia in there. I know that's a big take, so you process that for a little while and then get back to me when you realize how ridiculous it was to say that. I do have Ohio State beating Michigan, so Ohio State's getting in, but I'm starting to get a little queasy on that one. I'm not as confident as I was earlier in the season, so that's 2. I'm going to ride with TCU the rest of the way out. They've got Baylor this week. They've got Iowa State, who's absolutely miserable the following week, and that game will be at home. Then they got the Big 12 championship, which I guess looks like Kansas State right now. They beat them once already. TCU is unkillable. They're unkillable this year. No one can beat them. So I'm going to put them in. And then it comes down to Tennessee versus USC. If USC runs the table, that would mean they're beating UCLA, Notre Dame, Pac-12 championship, and they're going to have one loss and a conference championship where Tennessee would not. And we know the committee tries to say that they value those conference championships. So I don't know. I still want to lean to Tennessee because I think they're a lot of fun, and the committee knows they're going to make for great television. They'll just find a way to slot them like third so they don't have a rematch with Georgia right away. So that's where Joe Fortenbaugh's at. Georgia, Ohio State, TCU, Tennessee. But TCU, Tennessee, flipped, I guess. Go ahead.
We are almost exact. Where we differ is I've got Michigan beating Ohio State. I think they're the more complete team. Go blue, baby, go blue. Their running game is out of this world. Of course, as we know, we're going to talk about that in just a second with Blake Corum and the Heisman. And Ohio State, just the injuries worry me. So here's why: Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee. Tennessee gets in because I do, again, expect Ohio State to lose. USC is a little sneaky. Big game against UCLA this week. And, of course, then they end the season against Notre Dame. I've got Georgia beating Tennessee. I got Michigan beating TCU. And I got Georgia beating Michigan for the title. And nice. And finally, whacking Alabama and Nick Saban away. That's how I see it. That's how I see it playing out. All right, let's talk about the Heisman. Let's take a look at some of these odds as well for the Heisman Trophy. As we know, CJ is, of course, the favorite at plus 150. Who doesn't love Hooker? Blake Corum, I think, is an interesting conversation for us to have, right? Like, as I said, Ohio State and Michigan, they're about to face off on Saturday the 26th. If you feel that there is an upset brewing in Columbus, is now the time to jump on a running back, possibly winning the Heisman? I mean, listen, he was unstoppable against Nebraska, 162 yards on the season, almost 1,400 yards, 17 touchdowns. Is now when you jump on him, Joe? So that's a great question because that's how you have to look at these things. If you like Michigan to get past Ohio State, you're going to be in a situation where do you want to play him to win the national title because you might not get as good of odds? Corum's a big reason why. Plus 550 is very nice. So if you're looking at it like that, I can understand. What's hard for me is the idea of going non-quarterback when we have so many good quarterbacks this year. Like if C.J. Stroud and the Buckeyes lose, he'll be out of it, fine. Hendon Hooker's had a tremendous season. Caleb Williams at 10-1 is very intriguing because people know USC's playing well, but they're not getting a lot of credit. But the UCLA game is going to be a huge game for stats. It's going to be a high total. He's going to put up big numbers. Then he's going to have a nationally televised game against Notre Dame. Then he's going to have the Pac-12 championship. So at 10-1, Caleb Williams could be that guy, and we've seen this before. Robert Griffin III was one of those guys. The late surge, the final 3 to 4 weeks of the season, someone really steps up. That's what it was like for Devontae Smith a couple years ago. No one was talking about him until about 2 weeks to go. Then everyone thought they were so clever to recommend a wide receiver, and he ends up winning it. So I'm looking at Caleb Williams 10-1 because I see some value there at the current moment with the path. But the Blake Corum question, I can absolutely understand why people would want to play the plus 550. But you got to believe they beat Ohio State and that he has a big game there. For me, it's Hooker. I think he's just been sensational all season long. Of course, that one hiccup. But outside of that, against Georgia, 66-24 this past week against Missouri, 355 yards, another 3-touchdown game, ran it for 50 yards on the season, 24-2, 24 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the season. So for me, that's where my vote would go. But I don't have a vote, Joe. You have a vote. And so I'm curious, the way the timing pans out here, right? Like December 4th, the playoff teams are announced on December 4th, but the Heisman Award, the last day to vote is on the 5th. Do you, as somebody who does vote, do you wait until the last day to vote?
Yeah, well, it's very prestigious. Sorry you're not part of the group of like 4,000 of us. We're very elite individuals. Jokes aside, I always wait for the last day. I think this is going to be my 5th year voting, always the last day. I want everybody to have a fair shake. I want to watch every single game. I'm not submitting a vote before you get to these conference championship games. Those are big games. Everyone should be judged accordingly, full body of work. So it's easy. You just do it online. It takes less than a couple minutes. So the reality is I am going to wait for the last day to get that done. I think they deserve it. And I think you've seen votes shift that last weekend. Those recency bias is a very real thing with this. And that being said, I'm a man of integrity. I probably am not even supposed to be allowed to gamble on this. So I don't know why I was talking about gambling on this for like 3 minutes before saying I was a voter. But there will be no improprieties. Joe Fortenbaugh, man of integrity. Nobody has to worry about how I handle my business.
Well, Joe, after the show tonight, I'm heading into the city. I'm going to watch the Eagles at an Eagles bar, so not sure over under how many times I'm going to be singing Fly, Eagles, Fly, on the road to victory.
Very nicely done. Fight, Eagles, fight, score a touchdown, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm not doing the rest of it. That's
okay.
Enough. And I know Weimer's trying to get you. Weimer was hoping I'd sing the whole thing. I'm not singing the whole thing. We'll sing when they score.
It's okay. That little bit was just enough. You enjoy the game tonight, Joe. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Anita. Thank you for having me.
You got it. We go from Joe to Rob Domowski, who does a phenomenal job covering the Green Bay Packers. And man, what a game yesterday. I mean, this team down 14 points in the fourth quarter. They come back, like everybody, like stick a fork in them. Aaron Rodgers is done. And they come back and beat the Dallas Cowboys in overtime against their former coach, Mike McCarthy. So take us in that locker room, Rob. What was it like? What was the mood like post-game?
Well, Anita, I'm not going to do any singing like Joe did, but I think they were singing in the locker room. They were so happy. But it was a song of joy, relief, and even emotion. Matt LaFleur told us after the game that before he even went into the locker room to talk to the team, he was in his own private locker room, and he started to get emotional. And as he was relaying the story to us in the press conference, he choked up again. That just shows just how much this team needed this. A 5-game losing streak after being 3-1 to start the season. The season was on the brink. Even Aaron Rodgers said, hey, there could have been some guys when we're down 14 going, hey, it's just not our year, 3-7, we're cashing it in. But they didn't do that, and now at least they have a little bit of a pulse.
Yeah, I mean, just what an exciting game. And one wide receiver had a big game, and that was Christian Watson, who, as we know, some injuries, a lot of young guys on this wide receiving core, and some injuries that they've been trying to work out. But man, moving forward after yesterday, big things in store for him.
Well, here's the thing, Anita. He's already been through so much as a pro. He had a knee injury this summer, missed most of training camp. Then he pulled a hamstring. Then he got a concussion. In between all that, he dropped a 75-yard touchdown on the first play of the first game of the season at Minnesota. Last night, he drops 2 passes on the opening drive. So the fact that he came back and was able to do what he did last night, 3 touchdowns, 2 of them on the deep balls, I think it shows what kind of perseverance this kid has. Now that aside, he's still got to catch the football. That was a knock on him coming out, and I don't know that he's shed that just because he made a few good plays. But the Packers were being played so much differently by defenses this year. Offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich told us today that, believe it or not, teams are daring them to throw. They're playing only 1 high safety. And if they can hit on some of those plays to Watson down the field, because he's really their only deep threat, Anita, then maybe it'll get guys to go back into cover 2, which then opens things up for the run game.
So a lot of celebration yesterday, but not too much because it's a short work week, right? Thursday night game against the Tennessee Titans. So what does the rest of this week look like for the Green Bay Packers?
Well, Matt LaFleur said he slept in the office last night, and I guess I got to tell you, I believe him. I think defensive coordinator Joe Barry was wearing the same clothes that he was wearing on the sideline last night, so obviously that's just what it takes for a Thursday night game. But 2 things are positive for them on a short week. 1, they really didn't sustain any injuries last night, and 2, they actually might get a couple of guys back this week. One of them could impact the offense. Randall Cobb, their slot receiver, looks like he's ready to come back off injured reserve from an ankle injury. Matt LaFleur told us today that he's going to go through some of the jog through stuff today. Now, on a short week, they don't even really do anything other than jog through, so it might be a little bit more difficult for them to gauge whether he's ready. But watching Cobb run on the side the last couple weeks, it looks like he might be ready to go.
All right, so bigger picture here, right? The schedule does not get any easier. In fact, they go up against the Eagles after they play Tennessee. This is a Green Bay Packers team, I want to say 18% chance of making it to the postseason. So big picture here, what's in store?
Yeah, I wonder what the percentage would be like if they had lost yesterday. It had to be close to 0. But they're in a situation where they really can't afford to lose maybe more than one more game. I don't know if 8 losses gets you in the NFC, especially for them because they've already lost conference games, which means they're going to lose tiebreakers to Washington, to the Giants, if those teams factor into it. But we've seen this team go on a run before. 2016, they were 4-6. They had lost 4 in a row. Remember, Aaron Rodgers, Anita said, I think we can run the table, and they did. This team doesn't have that kind of talent, but they do have Aaron Rodgers, and if he starts to play more like he did yesterday, then maybe, just maybe, they have a chance.
A little birdie in my ear named Weimer told me it's 9%. Would have been 9% if they would have lost yesterday. By the way, Rob, love having you on Bet. And I know you got a big performance tomorrow on SportsCenter at high noon, so everybody tune in. Enjoy the game tonight, Rob.
Thanks, Anita.
You got it. Love that purple shirt. As always, we end Bet with Before I Let You Go. Now get this, home dogs are ruling the NFL this season. In fact, all 3 home dogs last week not only covered, but outright won. So, 34, 23, and 2 on the season, right? Last week I gave you the Steelers. This week I'm giving you the Minnesota Vikings at home plus 1.5. Listen, they upset the Mafia this past week against Buffalo. Jefferson, could he possibly be the best wide receiver in the NFL? That catch was unbelievable. Kirk Cousins, one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. They're going to be back at home. The Dallas Cowboys team coming in, losing to the Packers. Second away game on the road, and it is the game right before Thanksgiving. So I love my dogs this season. Vikings plus 1.5. Everybody, enjoy the game tonight. Good luck.